What happens when one of the richest athletes in the world gets called cheap by a wealthy socialite at a high-profile charity event? What she didn't know was that Shaquille O'Neal was about to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. The grand ballroom shimmered under the golden chandeliers, the air filled with the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of crystal glasses. It was an exclusive charity auction, packed with celebrities, business tycoons, and socialites eager to flaunt their wealth under the guise of generosity. Among them, towering over the crowd, stood Shaquille O'Neal, dressed in an understated black suit, his warm demeanor making him stand out among the arrogant elite. Shaq wasn't here for attention. He was here to give back, to quietly support causes that mattered to him. But not everyone saw it that way. Across the room, a woman draped in designer jewelry, sipping champagne with an air of entitlement, whispered to her friends while eyeing Shaq. "Look at him," she scoffed, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "A billionaire athlete, and he's barely bidding on anything. Guess all that money doesn't come with generosity." The people around her chuckled, entertained by the jab. Shaq heard it. He glanced in her direction but said nothing. He wasn't the type to engage in pointless arguments. But what happened next? That was something he couldn't ignore. Just a few tables away, a young father stood hesitantly near one of the auction items, a limited edition sports memorabilia set. He was nervously counting the bills in his wallet, clearly debating whether he could afford to place a bid. His little son, who couldn't be older than 7, looked up at him with hopeful eyes. "Daddy, do you think we can get it?" the boy asked, his voice filled with excitement. Before the man could answer, a smug, well-dressed bidder standing nearby laughed. "Unless you've got a couple grand lying around, I doubt it," he sneered. "Maybe you should try the silent auction in the back, where the cheap stuff is." The father's face flushed red. He smiled weakly at his son and took his hand, ready to walk away. But Shaq had been watching. His expression, calm yet unreadable, darkened slightly. The room had suddenly grown colder, the weight of silent judgment pressing down. And just like that, Shaq made a decision. This night wasn't over. It was just getting started. Shaq watched the father and his son start to walk away, their heads hanging low as they turned their backs to the auction table. The atmosphere in the room felt heavy with the sting of judgment, but Shaq's calm eyes followed them until they reached the door. He couldn't let it slide. With a deep breath, Shaq stood tall, his towering figure suddenly drawing the attention of everyone in the room. The room seemed to fall silent, save for the hushed whispers from the wealthy socialites who were suddenly watching the giant with curiosity. Shaq didn't need to say a word. His presence alone was enough to command the space. He approached the auction table where the young father had been standing, and the energy in the room shifted with every step he took. As Shaq neared the auctioneer, he gently put a hand on the employee's shoulder, a soft but firm touch that made the employee turn around. The employee's eyes widened as he looked up at the towering figure before him. "Is this how we treat people?" Shaq asked, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. The room was suddenly tense as everyone waited for the employee's response. Well, I didn't," the employee stammered, looking around, trying to save face. But Shaq wasn't having it. His words were measured, but there was a power behind them that made everyone listen. "No, you didn't. But you allowed someone to feel less than because of a few dollars. That's not what this event is about, and that's certainly not how we treat people who need help." Shaq paused, looking around the room, making sure his words resonated with the people gathered there. No one should ever feel like they're beneath anyone else. No matter what they have in their wallet, you should be ashamed of yourself. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. People shifted in their seats, some glancing at each other, while others suddenly seemed to reflect on their own behavior. The employee looked down, his face flushing with embarrassment, as he realized the gravity of Shaq's words. He was about to speak, but Shaq held up a hand, signaling that it wasn't necessary. Turning toward the father, Shaq's expression softened. His massive frame loomed over the man, but there was nothing intimidating about the way he spoke. His voice, gentle yet firm, held a kindness that made the father pause. "Hey, don't walk away," Shaq said. The father stopped, looking up at Shaq with confusion written across his face. "I saw what happened," Shaq continued, his eyes locking onto the father's. "I saw the way they treated you, and I want to fix that. Not just for you, but for your son, too." The father looked down at his son, who was holding his hand, his innocent face full of wonder. "What do you mean?" the father asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Shaq smiled, his voice softening even more. "I mean, I'm buying the entire collection you were looking at, everything on that table, and I'm paying for it with no questions asked." The father's eyes widened, a wave of emotion crashing over him. His jaw dropped, but before he could say anything, Shaq continued, "But it's not just about buying things. I'm offering you something more, too. A chance to feel like you matter. A chance to feel respected because you do." The father looked at Shaq, trying to find the right words. I don't know what to say. This is too much." Shaq chuckled, a warm, genuine laugh. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that you're worth it. And your son? He's watching you right now. Let him see what it means to stand tall no matter how much you have in your pocket." Tears welled up in the father's eyes as he nodded, feeling the weight of Shaq's words sinking in. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Shaq turned to the employee, who was now standing in the background, looking utterly ashamed. "You've got a lot to learn," Shaq said, his voice still calm but carrying the sting of truth. "But I hope this moment opens your eyes. Treat people with kindness, no matter who they are or what they have. We all deserve respect." The employee nodded, his face reddening as he took the lesson to heart. As the father took a step forward, Shaq put his hand on his shoulder, looking at him with sincerity. "One more thing," Shaq said. "Life's not about what you have. It's about how you treat others. You've got your son, and that's all that really matters. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than." The father's face softened as he looked at Shaq. "I'll remember that. Thank you, Shaq. You've changed everything for me tonight." Shaq nodded, his smile warm. "You're welcome. Now go home and take care of your son. You've got everything you need right here." He placed a hand over his chest, then gave the father a nod of encouragement before walking away. As Shaq moved back into the crowd, the room seemed to breathe a collective sigh. The moment had shifted. People were no longer whispering about Shaq's actions. They were reflecting. They were thinking about the lesson he had just taught, a lesson in kindness, humility, and humanity. Shaq had done more than just spend money that night. He had shown the world what it meant to truly live with heart. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. We all have the power to make a difference in someone's life. What's the most unexpected act of kindness you've witnessed? Let's hear your stories.